behalf of the Work Better Now team, I'd like to welcome everybody to Working Better Now, a series on workbetternow.com featuring a Q&A with a successful business leader. Today, we are thrilled to be joined by Gina Paoloni of the Gina Paoloni Group, CEO of the Gina Paoloni Group. Gina is a new but really new and really awesome new friend of WBN. We only met a few weeks ago through a common friend, and we seem to be hitting it off really well. Gina, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, me too. So let's jump right in. Tell us a little bit about your business.
Sure. So I founded the Gina Paoloni Group really to work with entrepreneurs who have gotten their business to a certain level. It's usually post-startup. They've got proof of concept. They have sales. They have a team together, and they've gotten to a certain place, and they think they know that there's more, but they don't necessarily know how to get there. And I would say it's prior to even, growing and scaling. It's really kind of, what is this, and how do I, take this organic thing that we've grown and now strategically make decisions to, really, fulfill its potential. So really working with small to mid-sized companies, I'd say, anywhere between $3 and $50 million, to really help them to, get to the next level. It can be anything from coaching the CEO to helping them, with their teams. I've run, very large sales teams with big P&L responsibility. So helping them with obviously with revenue growth and things like that, but also the more, the culture, the people, and especially as we've gone through COVID, a lot of my clients are coming to me and saying, like, how do we have, an environment that fosters team when we're all dispersed? So which we're all grappling with, right? So that's kind of, the buckets I would say are, helping them with strategy, helping them with, team leadership, all of those things. And then I think the difference, a lot of times what I bring to it is I execute, because I've been in their shoes. I've done their jobs. I've had to, so I can help with that.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a minute or two, because there's a bunch of people, I know a lot of people who help businesses of this size, but your background is really amazing. Tell us a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are right now.
Sure. It was definitely not a linear path. I would say I started out in sales, and I think I started out in sales from a very early age, selling my dad on, like, deciding what time of the day. If I picked a certain time of day to ask him something, I got a better result than when I didn't. So I think sales has been in my DNA. He was a salesperson. He later started his own business. But I would say sales. And then in my early career, I ran all of membership sales for Equinox Fitness Clubs. And I was part of the management team that sold the company to the 2 private equity firms that acquired it. So that was quite an experience. And then I kind of went on to, I had I lost both of my parents within the first year of getting married, and I had heard my dad's business at the same time, which was an electric motor distributorship. So not something I was very familiar with, but I basically ran it for 3 years, and then I decided I wanted to sell it. It really wasn't my thing. And I did something that I was really passionate about, which I took my business skills and I helped a not-for-profit in Malawi really, use those skills to grow and develop that organization. And that was such, a passion for me. And it was just a wonderful experience. And I was so excited and proud that I had the time to do that. So when I went in, she didn't have a 501c3 set up. And 4 years later, we had our fundraiser at Lincoln Center with $1 million budget. So we really grew it. And then I decided, that was doing well, and I'm still passionately involved with that and on the board. And but then I decided I wanted to go back into the business world, and I ran a luxury travel company and I helped them do a capital raise. We built out all the critical infrastructure and, really helped them triple membership, grow the business significantly. And then I got to the point where I said to myself, you know what? I think I just kind of want to do something for myself. Like I've helped all these other entrepreneurs grow their businesses and also been in entrepreneurial positions within companies like an Equinox. So I just decided I wanted to do something on my own. I had all this collective experience that I could bring to entrepreneurs. So that's when I founded my company to really, and I would say like I've consulted back and forth through the years and flirted. It was usually to sort of court a job, and now it's like, no, this is it. And I found my passion, and I love working with entrepreneurs. Like, you and I sat down with Andrew the other day, and like, I was getting excited about your vision and seeing that to come to light, and like, how can I help? And that's just my natural way of just wanting to help. And so I'm really excited and passionate about this next stage and really taking all of that experience and helping entrepreneurs get to the next level and see double-digit growth or triple-digit growth.
Got it. And definitely not linear for sure, but I guess we'll have to wait for the movie to come out to get all the details. But I do want to ask you a question. So Equinox, you went through, I don't know if it was hockey stick growth, but it was probably pretty close. If not, what was maybe the top one or two takeaways? And as you're working with business owners today, with respect to Equinox and what you went through in that experience, what were your top two takeaways for that?
So when I went to Equinox, I left a job where I was overseeing, 6 people, and then it went to 100 people. Plus, I was creating a new division within the company. So I used to say, we'd go to meetings and we'd come out with 50 more things to do. And I hadn't, it was 3 o'clock and I hadn't eaten or gone to the bathroom. There was a line out my door and 50 phone calls to return. And what I learned, the biggest takeaway was, you're never going to get through your to-do list. So especially when you're in hyper growth mode. So you must learn to prioritize, ruthlessly prioritize what is most important. And to this day, I work with the companies I work with. I'm like, what are the 3 critical priorities you need to get done this quarter? What are the 3 critical priorities you need to get done this week towards those goals? So it's that constant focus on what's most important to get done, because you can't get it all done. And you shouldn't, quite frankly, right? So you really need to be focused on, so that's one of the biggest things I learned, and just organizing that, organizing your time better, and so that you could focus on the most important things.
Yeah, got it. It sounds so simple, but it's so hard in real life, because usually the most important thing is not the most urgent. It's a big challenge, and I could see, having that experience under a high growth situation, I guess either you adapt to that or you're just not going to be able to grow, right?
It's that I don't love that whole drinking from a fire hose. Like, that doesn't feel good to anybody, and you just get burnt out as the leader. And to me, one of the most important things that you bring as a leader is your leadership presence. And if you're frazzled and strung out, like, what kind of message does that give to your people? So you really have to take the time and be able to focus on, having, space for yourself, right? And if somebody else is running your schedule and running your day and you're not in control, you're not a leader. So you've got to take that back. So that's one thing we focus on a lot with the leaders I work with. It's like, what can only you do? And then I think the other big thing, and this was at Equinox with some of my recent companies, as they work to create companies that have real enterprise value, right? The founder, who may have started out in sales, right? Then he's moved into, now, he's overseeing a team, but then it really changes, because now he's going out to really raise the profile of the business with the financial community or do these other things. So that segue, that transition is scary and it's hard, right? It's like the book, Who Moved My Cheese? It's like you keep running down the maze and the cheese isn't there, but you don't, go down a different path to find the cheese. So I think really redefining your priorities at every stage is crucially important, because the business is growing and you're growing. So you have to match that.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. Again, easier said than done. So you're now working with business owners, with entrepreneurs. You started to mention a few things, but tell us a little bit about some of the other common denominators of the things that you're seeing that they are doing, and what some of the other opportunities are for them.
Right. I think a lot that some of the biggest opportunities right now are coming around team. And like I said, I don't think any of us have the answers yet. And we've, certainly you could probably speak to this as with the, with your company and what you're doing with the virtual assistants. But I think, at least even for me, just having to learn all of the new different technologies, right? Because we're on Zoom and we're on Calendly, and the way that we're doing things, maybe we did it before, but now it's just accelerated, right? So I think that really kind of working through how to have that team and what's going on. And if you don't have those subtle cues where you're not seeing somebody in person, right? How do you know? Because one of my big, things I live by is like, people don't care how much you know till they know how much you care.
Right.
And how can you show you care over Zoom, right? When you're not seeing the person, when you're not, there's no body, there's some body language, but we're all sitting here, right? You see me from here up. Like, so how are you creating those real human connections and fostering those? And I think those are the challenges and the things that we're trying to work through with my clients is, and what's going on in their heads. Because if they're worried about, things that are outside of the workplace, like childcare and different things, I think having those, and it sounds, again, so simple, but like, hey, Rob, what's going on? How are your kids, right? Like I told you just before we got on, it's like I'm having all these Zoom meetings and I reached out, it's just my dog has like this infection. I have to run to the vet. And it's like, that takes over my day, right? Like it's in your thoughts, right? So I think that really what I'm seeing is people trying to figure out how to have those connections, because if not, you're going to see, turnover and things like that, because really what, we're wired for connection. And, that's what I'm seeing.
Yeah. And again, it's something that's so subtle, but it's so important. And I think a lot, and I've been guilty of this too. Business owners can get caught up in whether it's focusing on revenue or, looking at cash flow and things like that, that whether you're hybrid or you have people in the office, but especially if you have people who are remote, it's, if you're not focusing on those things, then you're really building a culture by default instead of by design. And you can't do that these days. You will not be able to have a scalable company.
It's funny. I had a client ask me to come in and do a culture workshop. They're like, we want to define our culture. I'm like, your culture exists, whether you know it or not. There's some DNA there. So, is it by design or is it by accident? It's exactly. It's so, I think the most important, and listen, again, companies are like people, flawed, messy, I always say you bring your whole self to work. So it's about, I think, the amplification of the things that, you want to, you aspire to be. It's like your future self. So you may not have a culture of, accountability or care or whatever, but it's like, if that's what you want, like, what are the seeds that we can water and then really, really kind of have it organically grow that way and direct it, but not so like beat it over the head. Like, this is who we are. No, there's a saying that I say, it's like, you can't hear what you're saying because who you are is speaking so loudly. As soon as you walk into a room, you're showing who you are and, you're a culture carrier, right? So I think it's all that being aware of how you are. And we as leaders really need to be aware of how we're showing up for people.
This stuff is not easy, people. I can tell you firsthand. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you for that. Tell us a little bit about your team, behind the group. Who else is there?
Sure. Well, it's so funny because I have a team. It's Gina, Jeannie, and Jenna and Sharon. And Sharon is like, she makes the joke. She's like, I think I need like a J name. I'm like, we're not the Kardashians. It's okay. But I have, I started this business out knowing that I was going to focus on my high priority activities. Because if I'm not living it, I can't teach it. So investing in those things is crucially important. Jeannie is my go-to. She handles my calendar. She handles billing. She handles all of those things for me. Plus she's like Inspector Clouseau, like literally the woman can figure out absolutely anything that I give her. Jenna handles all of my social media, any PR requests, anything like that. She handles all of that. And then Sharon really produces my summits, my podcasts. She helps me write. She writes some of my content. Well, she edits it. So from the beginning, I really set the business up so that I can be free to do the most important things that only I can do, which are basically, talk to potential clients and speak to clients and work with clients, and then do fun things like this,
Right.
to really, and this to me is fun. And above all else, I do believe that life should be fun. So, I think there's a lot of information out there. It's like, you should be doing this and you should be doing that and you should be doing that. And, be on YouTube and be here, be there. And for me, I was just like, I was listening to it and getting like a little bit overwhelmed. And I said, enough, like, put on your blinders, run your own race, which is the advice I've always given, and take your own medicine. And so I just started focusing on the things that I'm really, truly enjoying doing. Like I think I mentioned to you before, I'm going to start this podcast, which came out of doing this summit that I did. And just really, I enjoy listening to podcasts. I enjoy thought leadership. I enjoy listening to smart people and really asking questions, because to me, that's how you learn. So I'm actually in the process of doing that as well, launching my Untethered Entrepreneur podcast.
Yeah, tell us a little bit more about the Untethered Entrepreneur.
Yeah, so I sort of came up with the name. It was inspired by a book that you and I both love called The Untethered Soul. And the premise behind The Untethered Soul, it's a fantastic book that I think everybody should read. But the premise is that, it's about surrender. Like you and I, it took us 13.6 billion years to get to this moment in time. So, you can't control anything. Like it's a perfect moment. Like we're meant to be here, energetically, we're meant to be here at this moment, nowhere else. And that, you get in a car and you're upset because somebody's driving 10 miles below the speed limit and you're in a rush. Like you start to be aware of those moments. And in the scheme of, the cosmos and the universe, you realize just how ridiculous and insignificant that is. And when you start thinking in that way of like kind of the surrender in every moment, and by the way, this stuff is really not easy because the more you catch yourself and train yourself, right? Because it's always about training your mind, and because your thoughts control your emotions, your feelings, and then they control your actions, your habits, all of those things come out of that. So a lot of people say, well, I just can't do that. I'm like, no, you choose not to.
Right.
Of course you can, right? It's working on something. I can't speak in public. Yes, you can. If you train for anything, you can, I'm not saying you can become the greatest public speaker, but you can definitely speak passably well, right? So it's these things that we tell ourselves. So to me, the Untethered Entrepreneur is about freeing ourselves from all of the restraints that hold us back from achieving greatness in our business and in our lives, right? Because what we found is that they're inextricably woven together at this point, right? With work and with COVID. So yeah. I really want to explore, these topics further. And it's not, it's a little woo-woo, but I mean, it's not really, because there are certain universal laws that, I would like people to become aware of, because I worked in a really tough, male-dominated, like profit at any, cost, like mentality, which went against some of the, my feminine nature, I think. And I think for a long time, I sort of lived that way. And then I was like, you know what? That's not working for me anymore. And I don't want to show up that way. And I want to be who I am. And I want to teach others that you can be exactly who you are and still be successful and have, make a lot of money and do all of those things and help people and be a good human being.
Yeah. I know for me, it's funny. For me, I know since I've been meditating, I've been able to kind of see things in a way similar to what you just said. In fact, what I keep thinking about is, being in the car again, and somebody does something stupid, which happens all the time when people are driving. And, the old days I used to yell at them. Now I'm like, oh no, why would I yell at them? What's the point? They're not going to hear me anyway. Right. And that has helped me tremendously in business too, because I get to slow things down a lot.
Yeah.
What is the podcast out yet?
It's launching later in May. So, gotcha. And I'm going to ask you right here and now, will you be a guest?
Oh, sign me up. I'll be a guest and a listener.
Great.
Awesome. What, Gina, what do you like to do when you're not working?
So I like to say I haven't been everywhere, but it's on my list. I am an avid traveler. I love to travel. I love to explore new places, and I'm starting to feel like I like to explore less obvious places than I did before. Like I've checked all the big ones off the list, right? So it's like, so travel, discovery. I'm very passionate about Maloto, which is the charity that I told you about. And trying and making some impact there. I love to cook. I'm an avid fitness enthusiast. And I would say, like, if you had asked me 10 years ago, I would identify completely with being a runner, but now I would say like hot yoga is my number one thing that I love to do, but anything to be active. We are, we hike, where my husband and I and two of our youngest daughters are training to do this thing called Cactus to Clouds, which is an 8-mile hike that gains 1,000 feet of elevation in every mile. So it's like basically 8,000 feet straight up. So yeah, so those are some of the things I love to do, and walking my dog, and we live in the lower Hudson River Valley, and it's just beautiful. So yeah, being with friends, being with family, I think more than ever, just really COVID made us appreciate the very simple things that we have in life. And that's truer now more than ever for me, just kind of sitting in my backyard and reading a book or just relaxing. And I think I used to be spinning a lot more and like running for every dinner in the city and this, that, and the other thing. And now I'm kind of like, well, I'm picking my points a little bit more than I used to.
Yeah, the same thing has happened to me for COVID. And look, I have, two growing businesses, so I got to stay on top of that, and that still takes a lot of work. But what I've learned, and I don't know if this is something that you've realized too, what I've learned is that I don't have to be cranking away, nonstop without taking a moment to breathe and stuff like that. And I can actually get more done because I'm more clear-headed and more intentional.
100%. And I used to be that person who, had the to-do list and wanted to check off everything. And I'm like, so what if it doesn't get done? And I think that, not losing 2 years of time, but like really that focused time of kind of just being restrained, right? With COVID, you just became more aware of like, well, what are the things that I really have to do, right? Versus the things that I think I'm supposed to be doing, or the things that I'm trying to do for other people, right? And I've kind of given up a lot of what I'm being really intentional about the things that I will do for other people. I want to serve, I want to help people, but I want to do it in an intentional way without depleting myself.
Yeah, I mean, and look, at the end of the day, that's a big part of our mission at WBN, which is to help people take those things off their plate that A, they're not good at, or B, are not high valued, or C, that they just simply don't want to do. So that they not only can do better at work, but also have more of a life. Because what's the point of going through all the headache of having your own business if you're not going to have a life?
No, and you're robbing from your spouse or your friends or your kids. And let's face it, at the end of your life, really, it's a collection of, this is very personal, but I was in the room when my dad passed, and just watching that experience where it's like, wow, you really truly, like that night didn't have to, but I drove his car home from the hospital. I'm thinking like, this morning he was in his car and his house, and that none of that exists anymore. And I think, again, like the seed of the book, The Untethered Soul, really just brought that home for me. It's like, it's illusory, right? So it's those connections that we make, and who did we help, right? And if you're helping those entrepreneurs, what a great mission, right? And you're helping the VAs have a better quality of life. And, but I've never believed in the concept of work-life balance, because that is such a hard thing to do. It doesn't make sense, because sometimes you're working 80% and 20% you're not. And like, I think it just shifts so much. And, I think you have to be aware of, and there's different times of your life where you're focused on different things in your life, right? So if you're raising your kids, your family's going to be your most important value, and that's where you're going to spend your time. And then all of a sudden they go off, and then, well, maybe now I have the time to really focus more on work. So to me, it's not about work-life balance. It's about picking the areas of life where you're going to put your focus at that particular time in your life. And it changes all the time. And I think being really cognizant of that, and I take people through an exercise where we talk about that. And, what are the 2 areas of your life where you want to see the biggest change right now? Because you can't change everything at once, and you're setting yourself up for failure if you do that, I believe. That's
Great advice. It's great advice. Gina, this has been an awesome discussion, and I know you and I are going to continue it offline for some time. Where can people find out more about you and your company?
Sure. So we have a private Facebook group called the Untethered Entrepreneur on Facebook, the GinaPGroup.com, just GinaPGroup.com. And on Instagram, it's at Gina P Group, at Gina P Group, across all social. And yeah, just reach out, and would love to have everybody be a part of that community.
Sounds awesome. Once again, thanks again for taking a few minutes out of your day to share your thoughts. And this has been a great discussion. I really enjoyed it. And I'm looking forward to the next one.
Me too. Thank you so much.
Thanks.